You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And joining us once again today is our pal, filmmaker, author, and just so much more, the multifaceted Mr. Justin Beahm. Justin, welcome back.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. I was excited to hear from you guys and get a chance to join you again.
Yeah, like we had a blast. Like we could just sit here and talk to you about what about the extras of this movie? What about this movie? Like we could spend hours. I think I went back and listened to our first episode with you, and we kind of did that. We just like kept asking you questions. So this time we're mixing it up a little bit. We had you pick some movies. We went with one of your choices. So, but before we get into the film, I used to be a huge haunted house fan. I don't know if Kellen, did you and I ever go haunted house in college? We would always go to a haunted house with Tater, and then we would go to Waffle House. It was just kind of like
I don't know if we ever went Nashville Nightmares, maybe. Went to one that used to be near West End or in that part of Nashville where you crawled out this thing at the end and there was a guy with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
I went to one with my dad
haunted houses as well.
in the mountains of South Carolina where I'm from, and they had a dude with a real chain on the chainsaw, and I just about got my dad murdered there. So
Oh, well.
I've since not
Fun.
really been a haunted house guy.
like a
What
Shakespearean
the heck?
play.
Right.
Well, I used to be into them. I'm not as into them as I once was. First of all, my old ticker's not what it used to be. I don't want to stroke out, have a heart attack. Also, they've kind of gotten expensive, right? Also, my wife hates them, so I have no one to go with. But back in the day, my favorite was called Monster Mountain, and it was in Millersville. It was in the boondocks. They had like a giant yacht that you went through. They had a barn with like a disco inside with like this big monster DJing and people would dance. They had houses where you had to figure out how to get out, and one of them you had to go through the refrigerator. Like it was fantastic. You did have to crawl. I wasn't a fan of that, but it was my favorite. And even when you were waiting in line, they had two giant projectors playing old horror movies. So it was always a good time. But I digress. Something that always kind of freaked me out about haunted houses is we don't really know who's behind those masks and costumes, right? Like it could be anyone. It could be people with malintent or desire to hurt others. You know, that's a true fear. Like TJ said, someone with a real chain on that chainsaw. Like all that takes is a slip, or his vision's a little impaired with the mask, and he nips you. Like some scary situations there. Luckily, Scott Beck and Brian Woods and some others recognized that fear and gave us 2019's Haunt. If you're unfamiliar, on Halloween, a group of friends encounter an extreme haunted house that promises to feed on their darkest fears. The night turns deadly as they come to the horrifying realization that some nightmares are real.
That's true. And us being in Tennessee, I think we all have heard the legal battles and the horror stories of, I believe it's McCamey Manor. And
Correct.
they had a documentary about that and all the crazy uh, releases you have to sign, and just basically it's just torture that you agree to, and it's kind of weird what the legality of some of that kind of stuff is. So the fact that all it takes is just one wrong dude running one of these things that's got just a little bit of a screw loose, and you don't really know if you're in safe hands or not, and you don't know what you're signing on those releases that people are so willy-nilly to sign, right? So I mean, it's such a rooted in reality fear that hadn't really been tapped. I was always interested, and maybe Justin, you might can speak to this. Is it seemed like it was something in the zeitgeist around that time coming, and I think people were starting to hear about McCamey Manor and these knockoffs. They're more like the extreme haunts, right? That's not just the haunted house. It's the one where they're actually going to touch you and they're actually going to mess with you, and you have to sign away that that's okay. And I remember there was a film that came out about a year before called Hellfest, which was the first one that I had seen any kind of concept like this. It wasn't exactly the same. It was more like a Universal Horror Nights, like at a
Right.
theme park, and it's just
Yeah.
one guy instead of going to the old rickety house. But it honestly, that and Haunt's really the only two films um, that even remotely explore this idea. So
There was one that I think it was Vinegar Syndrome recently released. I'm pretty sure it was Vinegar, called Haunted Ween.
oh yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
was
yeah.
I was gonna. Yeah,
I
I
did
was
It's on
gonna
watch
my,
say
it's
that.
on
that
my
one.
shelf.
Yeah.
It's on
It's
my shelf.
isn't it like an old one from
That's a
like the
shot on
80s?
video. Yeah.
Yes, I had
Yeah.
that one. I had
It's
that
in
one.
Yeah.
it's in Kentucky. It was actually shot
Yeah.
like 30, maybe an hour from us.
And
I
I had never
think.
heard of that before the Blu-ray.
I
But
hadn't
yeah.
either. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of that. Well, Scott and Brian weren't basing this film off of anything contemporary. This is something that they had been dreaming up, that they had dreamt up when they were kids.
Oh
So it was a
yeah.
concept that they had carried forward over all these years and finally turned into a script. And actually, I think the script had been sitting around for a while, and then they dusted it off. And if I'm not mistaken, but I know for sure that it's something that they had been talking about since they were very young.
I'm
And
fairly certain. It's been a minute since I've read their book, which
mhm.
I talked to you about earlier. I'm pretty sure they mentioned how long it took them. Like there's like a couple entries where talking about how it was so hard to get it made.
Yeah,
So they definitely sat on it for a bit.
I went to a thing called Horror Campout, I want to say it was called, in Los Angeles. It was a similar thing to what you guys were talking about, where you sign a waiver and the monsters can touch you. It's not violent, though. They're not going to abuse you like that one you guys were talking about, where people actually got injured and stuff. But it was completely bizarre because there's this dusty field of nothing right next to Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. And you're kind of at the foot of it. It's up a little bit of an incline, and then all around you are just warehouse buildings. Anyway, my friends asked me if I wanted to go because they had an extra ticket. I'm like, cool. They're like, we're going to be camping overnight. They're going to assign us a tent, and all we have to do is make it to morning. And then we get some prizes. There's going to be different challenges and different. So we get there and we get in, and it really was just a bunch of tents in the dirt. But then there were different zones set up. And one of them I remember was like a Mothman zone. One of them, it was themed zones throughout the place. And you had to go and get through these challenges to earn these like candy skulls or something that you would accumulate and then turn in at the end of the night. And you got prizes or something like that. But they would like people were, if you weren't paying attention, a monster could come up and grab you, and then they put you in these cages. And then your friends had to go and barter for your freedom. So they had to give up the prizes they had won to try to get you out of these little cages and away from these beasts. The worst part of oh, they also had movies playing the whole night too on this big inflatable screen off on the side. That was kind of cool. But at around 3 a.m., my friends and I were like, I think I said I need a nap for just a little bit, just a little rest, and then we can return to this. Just give me an hour. I remember two of us going in the tent, laying down. I was super exhausted. I fell asleep. And the next thing I know, I hear screams and I hear a chainsaw, and the zipper for the tent flies open. Some arms reach in. I was in the back of the tent, accidentally in the right place. Arms reach in, grab my friend by the feet, drag him out, and it zips the front of it shut. And then he just disappeared. And we
That's a
had to
terrible way to wake up.
That's a horrible way to wake up, especially after you'd only slept for like 25 minutes or something. So your brain's not even there. But then we had to go and make a deal to get him freedom, which we did. We had to find the cage that he was in, and
So
it
you're
was
like
wild.
bartering with Leatherface, be like,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it was the strangest thing. Uh, I, I don't know that I do it again, but it was supposed to be a touring thing where it was going to go around the country to different cities. And I never really heard much about it after that one. So this very well could have been a true murder situation where they were hiding people in the derelict bus in one of the zones or something, just stacking bodies up in there. It was crazy. It was crazy.
wow. So this film come out in 2019, like right before the pandemic, kind of hit at a very specific time. And I imagine, like myself, it didn't come across my table until the pandemic. And those couple of pandemic Halloweens were kind of like extra isolated, extra kind of creepy, crazy.
Mm.
Because if you were able to go to something haunted, it had all of the extra COVID, not as many people can go through and all that kind of stuff. So it was just like extra weird and just added layer to an already unsettling scene kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So watching it under that kind of atmosphere, I feel like added a little bit extra to it. But I mean, these guys, I think these guys can do no wrong in my opinion. I mean, Quiet Place was just such a great new take on not only the monster movie, but just the way you tell a story. So much of it plays out like a silent movie just because of the
yeah.
nature of the scene and the world building and everything. And then to take what they, you know, sometimes when you have a major success like that and you can just kind of write your next check, this ain't the check most people would write. You know, a little small movie where it's not a lot of big names or anything. It's just it's a tight thriller with a concept that everybody can immediately get, and everybody who's ever been in a haunted house has wondered, is this real? Is this not real? And playing with that element and just taking it to the hilt, I think is just genius. And one of my favorite things that they do that none of the other handful of haunt movies that we can name have done is they make the monsters wearing the mask their reality personas behind the mask are more creepy than the mask, which I
Mhm.
thought that was a cool take. Like they're, I guess, gradually making themselves into their own kind of characters,
Yeah.
which is exploring that kind of psychosis even more. But Justin, I'm curious how you first come to this project and knowing the writer directors and being able to work on the special features for the haunt releases.
Scott, Brian, and I, well, we're all from Iowa, and
Oh,
we go
really?
way, yeah, we go way back. I was helping. I remember I was just telling the story the other day. Being in downtown Iowa City, which is where the University of Iowa is, and we were shooting a pilot for MTV called Spread, which was about this virus that was sexually spreading around through campus, and it was turning people into complete maniacs. And because they had won a contest
Kind
through
of like
MTV,
Rabid.
kind of, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
minus the like armpit
Yeah. Vampire
thing,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
vampire armpit. I love that movie. I love that score. God, that score
Oh,
is so
yeah.
good for that movie. I
Real
just
good.
love that movie so much. Anyway, um, we I so they've been shooting stuff since they were kids. And even back in high school, they were so dialed in. They were very keen on monitoring the response from audiences. They would have screenings of their homemade films at the local cinema, and they would pass out audience feedback cards. I mean, these guys are like teenagers thinking on that level.
Wow.
And their creative partnership was forged during that time, which has created something really remarkable with the two of them co-directing, because co-directing doesn't always work well. And at best, it creates a scenario where everybody in the crew is having to sort of double report
Right.
everything. When a decision's to be made, double check A and then double check B. I'm working on a movie right now, that a release of a film that had two directors, and everyone's like, it was great, but it was kind of complicated because we were having two guys to answer to, and more so two guys to report to. So anyway,
Right.
Scott and Brian share a brain, and if they were on here right now, they would tell you the same thing.
So it's
They're
kind of like the Coen brothers.
Yeah, it really is. They can finish each other's sentences. They are creatively, morally, just like everywhere, they're just like on a level with each other. And they've continued with their roots in Iowa and come back here when they have a new film come out. They'll usually come back to the state the opening weekend, and they'll attend a screening here and do a Q&A somewhere. And I've done a number of those where they bring me, like, the three of us will go. We did it in Iowa City. We did it in the Quad Cities at one, like, Davenport at one point for one of their films. Like, we'll just go and I handle the Q&A with them. That's where they're spending their opening weekend, is here in Iowa, which I think is amazing. And so when Haunt came out, Well, A Quiet Place was amazing. I remember seeing it in the theaters, sitting there and just marveling at what they had accomplished, which is a whole other story about how they had to pitch that movie. Imagine going to different studios and pitching a silent film.
Right.
It's the most unlikely hit ever, and they managed to get it to happen. And what an amazing end result. When Haunt landed, it kind of came and went pretty quickly. Then when I saw that it hit video and it was like DVD only, and it was Walmart only or something in the beginning with no special features, I was so for them, crushed for them. And almost immediately I started talking to them about, okay, what can we do? Because this movie's so good. And it was a moment for them because it was really happening simultaneously with A Quiet Place. So while Quiet Place was happening, they were shooting Haunt.
Okay,
And
so that wasn't really where they cashed in their chips
correct,
from the Quiet Place fame that got. They were already
correct.
doing that.
It was a happy accident that, I mean, it fed Haunt. I think A Quiet Place, of course, fed Haunt and its release. But this was something, like I mentioned earlier, that they had been wanting to tell this story for a very long time. And they got the means together and shot this thing. And I thought it was so ambitious and beautifully realized. The individual characters of Clown, witch, I mean, they're all very iconic too. As you've seen, there's action figures and masks and costumes and stuff now. But we were just talking one day, and I asked them what were the chances of us being able to do this on a grander scale. And they're like, well, not yet, I think was the initial response. And then eventually I kept bugging him about it. And eventually it got to the point where it's like, well, I can't remember who, maybe Universal or something was behind it ultimately, or had rights or something. Anyway, they were open to the discussion. And so I took it around to these different distributors that I work with, just saying, hey, Scott Bryan and I want to do something with this. We had our ideas, but we were like, at least with new interviews and commentary, just something new. And the one that really got excited was Ronin Flix, which Ronin, I've worked on a few releases for. They're independent, so they have absolute freedom to do whatever they want for the most part with their stuff. They love to license movies like this that aren't going to have a heavy studio shadow cast over the production. And it turns out that everybody inside the company was a huge fan of the movie already. So when we showed up with it, it was like, oh my gosh, yes. And then the famous last words, whatever you guys want. And so we went crazy on this release. We went absolutely nuts. And everything that I threw out, Scott and Brian were super pumped about. They were, yeah, yeah, well, maybe we can make that happen. Or I'm sure we can find that stuff. I'm like, let's find videos from when you were kids, your home movies. Okay, well, we'll gather as much of that as we can. And I'm like, let's get the soundtrack. And they're like, well, I don't know if we can do that. We eventually made it happen with Tom and Andy because no score had been released. You remember Tom and Andy from like Killing Zoe?
Oh
When I
yeah.
was a kid, I loved that soundtrack so much. And so I was pumped to have something with them on there and then to interview them. Oh, dude, it was so cool. And things kept falling into place. And COVID happened during this time. And so nobody could be filmed. And a few of the actors were in productions elsewhere, having to do real production under COVID protocols. But all I could do was remote for this. And so the unfortunate side of it is, yeah, I mean, there are only a few in-person interviews, but the cast, especially for most of them, or at least a good number of them, were shot through remote means for this documentary. And I knew Scott and Brian had told me about the haunted attraction that inspired them when they were kids, because they had one locally, like you guys were talking about. Oh, I know this one. Remember this? And they had one in Rock Island, Illinois, which is in the Quad Cities where they grew up. That was what inspired this initial idea back when they were teenagers. And I found that that place is still open. It has different ownership, but it turned obviously they're huge horror fans. And so when I reached out to the people who run it, I'm like, do you think we could shoot some interviews there for a thing? And they're like, what is it? And I'm like, haunt. And they're like, oh my God, you can do whatever you want. You guys come on in. And so we set it up for a day. They were preparing for their season. I think we were in fall when we were shooting this, or like late summer. And so they were dressing the place already for the next season, but they just let me and my crew go in there and set up in a couple places. And I shot Justin Marks in there, who played Clown, who gave an amazing interview. He's a tremendous actor. And then Scott and Brian. And then I even did a handheld thing, following him around, just making their way through the corridors, considering this space that had meant so much to them when they were kids. And that ultimately was the impetus for this movie. And then I assembled everything. I got the bad guys together, most of them, for an audio commentary, which I back when I was doing the Halloween thing, one of the first two commentaries I ever put together was Don Shanks on Halloween 5, the first time that Halloween 4 and 5 hit Blu-ray. And the Anchor Bay didn't want to do any extras, but I begged and begged, just like one on each. So I got Don Shanks on 5, speaking to the point here, because there hadn't been a Michael Myers commentary, and I really wanted
and
that.
He got to play him in 5, and he was probably the most massive guy to play him at that point in time, right?
Yeah, and he had great stories. He got injured, and it turns out, oh, here's a weird connection. Scott and Brian, at the time when I was working on Halloween 4 and 5, had just finished shooting a movie, I think in Canada. No, it was in Salt Lake City. And it was called Nightlight. If you guys haven't seen Nightlight, track it down. It's this crazy concept of a horror movie, and it's told from the perspective of a flashlight.
Oh,
Sounds
I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah,
like,
right.
If it's weird shit like that, I'm
It's
in.
like the one being told from a dog.
I'm stoked for that because that
It
means the
sounds-
dog doesn't die, right?
It sounds ridiculous, but it works so well. Anyway, on that film, their stunt coordinator was Don Shanks. So if you listen to the Halloween 5 sound or commentary I did with Don, we talk about Scott and Brian on there, and who knew this would all roll into this stuff that everything is so kind of interconnected. But anyway, so I wanted the monsters on an audio commentary, and we recorded that in Justin Markson's living room, which was incredible. Got to spend time with his wife and his kid and all of that. So anyway, that's kind of the how it all came together, at least at the beginning. And it was a tremendous honor, and we were so grateful. Ronin even acquiesced to our design, like what the guys wanted for the cover art, putting like on the slip, for example, it has Justin as Clown, and when you lift the slip off of it, it has his face under the mask underneath it.
Oh, that's cool.
I thought that ended up being really, really cool. And then inside there, we got all kinds of goodies. In addition to that soundtrack, there's posters and pins and magnets and all kinds of other stuff. All this crazy release for a movie of this scale, I think, is unheard of and so awesome.
And I just ordered it off Ronin Flix as you were talking because they still have their sale right now.
Oh yeah,
You should have been paying attention. This Nightlight, I don't know if you can see that. It's on Look Movie. It's like 5 friends.
Okay.
The tagline: 5 friends, 1 game, 0 chance of survival.
it's so cool.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that after we're
Very again an inventive way to tell a story, which is what Scott and Brian are all about. They made a spaghetti western in high school.
Amazing.
It's called The
Really?
Bride Wore Blood. You need to check that out too. I'm sure that's out there somewhere. I have a DVD that's ancient, but I know you can find it out there. But check out Bride Wore Blood. But if you just look at what we're talking about here with these guys, the diversity of what they've created, I think, is incredible.
It's kind of like the Russo brothers in a way, like how they've done so much.
Yeah.
Well, see, I compared them to Moorhead and Benson because they're kind of more like street level at this point, I think, besides the Marvel stuff they're working on. Their stuff kind of feels familiar to one another, where Scott and Brian's, I think all their movies are distinct in their own.
Yeah, they are, and I love that. I really, really admire that. I admire artists who go the way they want to go, not the way the wind blows. And that's absolutely them. And that's continuing to be proven true when they came out with something as absolutely chain rattling as Heretic.
that plays like a stage play until the final act, basically.
And so brilliantly written, so densely researched, and to present it with that kind of tension and give it that hard left at the end of it that no one's expecting. I I remember seeing a friends and family screening for feedback early on that. I'm just sitting there like, wow,
So good.
this is, and they needed that.
Mhm.
I think they needed that, especially after they went studio with 65 and they had been Quiet Place and all these other things. Uh, it was nice to see them do this kind of brave storytelling, continue to engage in stuff that's completely outside the norm. No one else would be making that movie. Nobody.
Boogeyman
And
was good too. We haven't mentioned Boogeyman yet, but that was a Stephen
yeah,
King adaptation, right? And
yeah,
that was pretty solid. That was Sophie Thatcher.
yep,
I assume they enjoyed working with her, which is why she's in Heretic.
yeah. And Sophie's incredible, and she's blowing up now. I mean, they kind of have their finger on the pulse. Look at the cast of Haunt. It's a very similar thing. Damien had been in Strangers too, I think, and Justin Markson has been plying his trade forever. He's in so I had him in a short film of mine back in like 2009. He played a businessman who got victimized by a hitchhiker, and then the tables turn. Sorry, I bumped my mic there. And then the tables turn in the situation, and we shot that in a barn on a farm in Iowa. And Justin, who plays clown in this movie, was my main bad guy in that.
Oh wow.
So it's all interconnected.
Yeah, so you're talking about the soundtracks and something about that with scores and soundtracks. There's so many scores that are still not out. I have a USB drive of like probably like 50 to 100 scores that just aren't out yet that I'll have to find somewhere, including The Lost Boys, which is crazy. You would
Yeah.
think that would have gotten dropped. It's not. It's just, it's fascinating. Somebody works on a film, does composition, sometimes big orchestras, and it just vanishes. It's like it doesn't exist. And that's such an odd, it's something I think needs to get more detail in the film industry is like getting these things out, especially music. So,
Yeah. And I see more labels paying attention to that. If you look at labels like TerrorVision, which did admittedly begin as a record label, they're releasing soundtracks for things that no one else would touch, like Unsolved Mysteries, Freddy's Nightmares, Dead Kids. Dead Kids is a score from Tangerine Dream, which that's not a nobody group,
right.
Tangerine Dream. I still have the audio cassette that I recorded back when I was a teenager off of my Lettuce Video, that was the distributor, VHS tape of Dead Kids, where I just recorded when the music came in. I didn't know who Tangerine Dream was. I just knew I loved that weirdo score in that film. I
Hmm.
still have that tape. So Waxwork, TerraVision, there's a number of labels like this. What is it? Death Waltz.
Yeah. Hmm.
They're digging deep and they are getting stuff. But what I will say to your point here, John, is that music rights are often the Achilles heel of the re-release of a film.
Hmm.
It is often the case that if you're not seeing something out there, why isn't this movie seeing re-release? It's most of the time it boils down to a music rights issue because music rights were handled differently,
Hmm.
especially prior to the last 30 years here. Anything prior to that, it was a very different universe for this. And look at Wonder Years. Look at WKRP in Cincinnati. Both those shows are built around music. And so they had the hardest time releasing them properly for years. And they tried Wonder Years with like a Muzak
It's just
soundtrack
not
to
the
the whole thing.
same.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
Right.
terrible. It's awful. And people were like, no, we'll wait, do it right, and then come back to us. And I think they finally have. But
Yeah.
I am excited to see, and like I point to TerrorVision because I'm close to them, but also a lot of respect for guys like Ryan who are willing to put money into stuff that is not at all a home run.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's, I will say with Haunt, I think the thing that I really notice about this film, like, I guess, what is it, 6 years later, is that it is a horror film that everybody loves. And that is so rare now
Mhm.
because this planet is divisive on
Yeah.
everything. It doesn't matter how something could be, you would think it would be loved. Someone's going to shit on it, right? So the fact that everybody I know, when they mention Haunt, likes it, that is an accomplishment. because there's people that hate The Exorcist. There's people that hate Texas Chainsaw. Like it's just
Abigail, like the list
yeah,
could go
right.
on and on and on.
Yeah. So I thought that was like the first thing, like home run on their end. I did like that the killers in the movie aren't really explained.
Yeah.
I like that there's this weird, almost like they're supernatural, not totally supernatural, but there's something about their deformities to where you just think that's not human. Even the voice, with the actor who plays the guy in the red,
The devil guy. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool. I thought it was interesting that in the movie they chose Harper, so they're stalking Harper, and they didn't really explain that, and I thought that was fascinating too. Like it's like a Michael Myers type thing where they were just trying to find people, and she was unlucky enough to be chosen. But there, you don't. I kind of like that though, in a way where you don't you leave the movie with more questions. You know, I enjoy not totally just peeling the curtain back on all this stuff, and I'm sure that them as writers probably have backstories. But sometimes it's almost, I've heard a lot of times it's like the backstories are more for internal discussion versus for the audience.
Yeah.
Or for the actors to inform how they play things.
Yeah,
Right,
the guys
yeah.
talked about that on the audio commentary. We discussed this, and especially Chaney, who played Ghost in this film, there wasn't a backstory for Ghost, but he developed one that was very elaborate. And because he's a real cerebral actor, and really Damien is as well, well, all three of the guys are. Justin, Damien, and Chaney. But I was really blown away by Chaney's depth that he had gone to for creating that character. And to your point about people loving this, there's something about things that dropped during COVID. You look at the unlikely success of shows like Tiger King, for example. And I don't know if anybody's revisiting that now very much. I think they made some sequel series to it or something, but
It was a cultural moment.
it was a zeitgeist thing, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to predict that. There's no way. But I think that to your point earlier, TJ, things that landed and that we experienced during COVID are more personal because that was such a deeply personal time for all of us. Yeah, it was confusing. Yeah, there were frustrations, yada, yada. But really, that's arguably the closest many people have been with their families on a day-to-day basis in their lives,
Right.
in generations, because we're always all out there hustling and moving about. And so I think that the way people came together to enjoy things during that window of time, I think is really vital to their legacy and how they endure. And I think that Haunt benefited from that in a way that other entertainment did, especially things that landed on home entertainment. And also what they did with this movie, in addition to a creative story, I would say, is that they nailed the Halloween holiday.
Yeah.
You mentioned Hellfest earlier. That hardly even feels like a theme park. It's just so gigantic. And when
Yeah.
you get inside the building in that, you're in a warehouse and you feel that you're in a warehouse. Scott and Brian specifically wanted Haunt to feel like a JC's haunted house in the middle, like out on the outskirts of town. Especially those of us in the Midwest know those so well. That's so familiar and so Halloween comfort food for us. And it feels handmade. There's nothing over the
It feels
top
like
in
something
any
just
of
a
this.
few crazy people could realistically throw together in an old warehouse somewhere. And yeah, it feels like a lived-in reality.
Is there a part of you when you're doing these special features, especially with this movie, to where even though you obviously want to dig behind the scenes, you want to talk to them, is there like that part of you, maybe even as childlike, where you don't want to know the mystery sometimes? I find myself sometimes when I watch films, as much as I'm obsessed with everything, I think to myself, gosh, sometimes it's almost cool not knowing like some things. Like with some horror films, like with these, I can think of like Hell Night from 1981. Like the actors who played the killers in Hell Night, they've never really interviewed them, and that's such an interesting thing. I didn't know what you think about that when you're doing these things. Is there like a part of you that's like worried you're going to see too much of the magic type thing?
Man, that is such a great question. And it's just something that I've talked about a number of times with just like my friends. Because, well, first of all, the ambiguity aspect that you guys were talking about a few minutes ago, I think is really vital to this movie. Not over explaining things. But if you look at how Scott and Brian write, that's kind of a thread for them. If you look at A Quiet Place, you're not getting answers. You're dropped into a moment with this family, and then it ends with them at a moment, but you don't know anything more than what you did at the beginning. You look at Heretic. There's some exposition at the end there, but ultimately still there's so much mystery around that whole thing. And this guy's presence, how long had he had, anyway, it's part of how Scott and Brian are storytellers. And to your point here about not wanting to lift the veil too much, I do kind of mourn that. I've had the most amazing opportunities. We were talking about Big Trouble in Little China earlier. I love that movie so much. And that's one that was an absolute dream to be a part of.
R.I.P. Wind this week.
Yeah. Yeah. The the chance to work on these things is a tremendous honor, but it is like getting into a relationship you know is doomed from the beginning because I'm going to spend an intense amount of time with this thing, this like a person. I'm entering into this relationship, and I know that over the coming months, with increasing intensity, just like a relationship with somebody, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and I'm going to be more in it. I'm going to have watched this movie so many times, pulling clips for cutting stuff together, and I'm going to learn about everything underneath the hood. And there is a part of me, John, that wishes that I hadn't the exposure that I have to some of these. Like working with Halloween was a tremendous honor, working with that franchise, but I kind of wish I just didn't know about everything behind the scenes on that. And but there are some that I'm anxious to learn about, like Tank Girl, for example. I always loved Tank Girl. I've now had the opportunity to work on that film twice, and I love it more now than I did even before, which I didn't think was possible. And the understanding of what absolute masterminds like Catherine Hardwicke, the production designer, invested in that movie, that makes it richer for me than to watch. But if I know the secret and the sauce for everything, and I keep looking over at my like bookshelf with the stuff that I've worked on sitting on it, and I'm trying to think of some titles that I really kind of like, man, I didn't need to know as much as I know now. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just generally, there is a little bit of the magic that has changed for me. It's not gone. I still love watching movies. I still can completely lose myself in them and get invested. But then there are some that I don't even want to touch.
Mm.
There are some movies that I hold so dear that I don't, I wouldn't want to work on it if I
Like
could.
The Thing.
The thing,
I was gonna say things.
No,
well, I don't want to work on
things.
things. No, I think enough has been said. That has a soundtrack now. There's
Yeah.
a score for.
Yeah,
Speaking
they have it
of
on
soundtrack-
cassette for Christ's sake.
Isn't it TerraVision? I think.
I think
TerraVision
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But carpet. One of my first, and I'm pointing to things as though you guys are in the room with me here. My first cover story for a magazine was The Thing for Famous Monsters years ago, and I was so excited to tell that story. I loved learning everything about that one. But that's one where that documentary that came with the original Laserdisc is so perfect.
It's really
it has
good.
Rob
That was on the first
Bottin.
DVD, wasn't it?
Yeah, it got ported
Collector's
forward.
edition.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep. And there's not a single thing that I don't know what more needs to be said about that film. So I wouldn't want to be hired for it because what else do we do? The person I would love to get to dig in more with would be Rob Bottin, and he's Sasquatch now. He's disappeared into the forest and doesn't do interviews. I mean, every time I'm talking to special effects people, I'm always like, "Do you ever talk to Rob Bottin?" No, we never hear from him. Only a couple people do. So I don't know what else could be done there. Um, Stephen King is someone who I deeply love. I don't have anything to interview him about because he's been an open book from the start, and he's been so great and transparent in his process and his life. And On Writing is such an amazing book about his world. I If I had the chance to sit down with him, I would just have dinner and have a conversation about the Red Sox or whatever. He's, I don't have questions for him about his work. So it's more that now is I've had the chance to interview pretty much everybody on my bucket list, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm glad there are still plenty of movies out there that I haven't had my hand in that I really, really love because the magic is still completely intact on those.
So yeah, 2019's Haunt, a movie I had never heard of or seen anything about or knew about. I actually, when I was looking the movie up to watch it for the first time, I had to ask the guys because two Haunts popped up, the 2013, whatever that was, and then this one, 2019's Haunt, which has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty fantastic for a movie that got no real exposure.
Yeah.
I mean, it never. I don't remember ever seeing anything remotely related to it. Not even in a liner note in another horror film, where sometimes they'll have like also on available on Blu-ray or DVD. So I had no expectations going in. I had no idea what it was about. I like going into movies like this that I don't know about or I haven't heard about blind. I don't look up plot. I don't look up pictures. I don't look up anything about it. The only thing I looked up was a picture for my background, and saw the masks, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in." I love these form molded masks. These they have the antique feel that look like the most horrifying costumes of all time were definitely the 50s and 60s. Those PVC suits and the masks, the even the mascot style costumes were horrifying. If you look up some of the ones like for Easter, those bunnies were no wonder our parents were so hardened, because that was what they were dressing up as to terrify their Gen X kids, which is also why they don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. Not saying anything about Gen X, but if you grew up with an Easter bunny who looked like nightmare fuel, I can imagine you'd be a little
I dressed up as one at Walmart.
There you go.
You did. I remember that.
I have to find that picture and share it this week.
And those
Please
masks
do.
are available from Trick or Treat Studios, by the way. Those are the guys who put those out.
Yeah,
They put out the figures too.
That's
Shut up
fantastic.
and take his money.
Right. I've got
They're
8 masks
great.
already. What 6 more? And these masks are fantastic. I think sometimes creative types get a little too bogged down in trying to be overly creative. We talked about it with In a Violent Nature. That mask was just too over the top. It didn't work for
That
me
mask-
because it was
That
almost
mask was hilarious. I
you
couldn't
paint it
believe-
yellow and he's a minion. You're getting
Yeah.
stalked by Jason Voorhees in a minion costume.
And he looked like the creature from that old Roger Corman film, like Beast from 20 Fathom, whatever it
A
is.
little
There's,
bit.
Oh, yeah.
there's this
I,
old
I was
Roger
expecting
Corman
at some
creature.
point Cuba Gooding Jr. to come up and teach him how to be a Navy scuba diver. But
That was so funny.
it's a very specific reference.
Damn.
Men of honor. Nice.
But these are the masks that really get me in horror films, and it goes back to Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, even Scream in the 90s. Simplicity always wins over. If you can create a sense of unease in something that's somewhat familiar or almost even not meant to be terrifying, like this clown mask is not meant to be terrifying.
Yeah.
But it is. And what's so unique about this film that I really, spoiler alert, I did like this. So John, your point stands proven. Everybody that you know still likes this movie. I will say at one point I thought I was going to hate it, and I was preparing myself to hate it, and I was pleasantly surprised. We'll get there in a minute. Spoilers. But I liked the premise, like John said, that there's no backstory. You don't know who these guys are, why they're doing what they're doing. And then when they remove their mask, it creates another sense. It almost reminded me of watching Lost. Like there's things that we're never going to know.
Yeah.
We're never going to know why these guys are mutilating their faces, what their purpose was in creating a haunted house where they obviously have been murdering people up to the point that this group comes through with our final girl Harper, played by Katie Stevens. So there's more answers or more questions than answers. What the movie does answer is their story, right? The group of friends that go to the haunted house, we get their story. And I think that's such a unique concept because sometimes we're overindulged in getting information. I know when Lost came out, a lot of people were just turned off by how many answers were left ungiven by the creators. Why the hell was there a polar bear on the island? I mean, we're so used to getting rewarded, especially in instant gratification society that we live in. We want our reward now. So it is kind of refreshing sometimes to get a movie like this where you're left with questions, but you're still left satisfied. That's really special to do, and it's a fine line to walk and to do it well. And I think this movie did a fantastic job of that, especially with a $17 million budget, according to the old Google box. Like I said, 71% on Rotten Tomato, definitely deserved. An hour and 32 minutes. I feel like this is another, I'm saying it again, I feel like we could have added probably 5 or 10 minutes to this. Just because there are parts that do feel a little rushed. The main final girl, Harper, kind of gets her bearings a little too quick for me. But I also understand this is kind of a life or death situation, and now she's in fight mode instead of fight or flight. So, or instead of flight, she's in fight mode. But the sequence where she's figuring out how to get out of that room, I thought was a little rushed for me, just because how quick she got there. I do like that it splits them up and we get them all in separate rooms. Escape room. My problem with that was you have everybody together and they're all dying in one room at a time. This, I think, creates a bigger sense of terror. That sense of being alone. Like you're there with friends, but now you're secluded. You want to get to your friends. You want to get to safety. You're torn between, what do I do? Do I go back and save my friend? Do I keep moving forward and hope that they make it out? So this movie does terror well. The part that got me to where I was thinking, I'm going to hate this movie, is as it progresses, you start getting the feeling, especially with the clown character, Justin Markson, kind of methodically doing things behind the scenes. He's not interacting with them so much, but he's wrecking their escape. He's in another room working on something. He's not necessarily part of everything, but he's doing stuff secondary to make you think they're not going to survive. There's not going to be any survivors. And I hate that in horror movies. Me and Jay have talked about this before. I hate when the bad guy wins. And this is just for me. Don't come at me. I understand that there is a place for it in horror. It's just not for me, because the bad guys win all the time in real life. We call them politicians, but or billionaires, whatever you want to say. So movies are an escape for me. So when I start watching a movie, Drag Me to Hell is a perfect example. I love every second of that movie until the last 30. When she gets drugged to hell in the end, I was so mad at that film for pulling me along, because it kept she's narrowly escaping this whole movie. She's running from it. It's kind of like It Follows. Like she's trying to escape this fate. Oh, and she doesn't, by the way.
What was that movie called?
It Follows.
No, the one you're describing.
Drag Me to Hell.
And what happened at the end?
She gets drugged to hell. But that's not the point. That's not the point.
Hey, Justin Long survived that one for once.
And he probably still feels
That's
bad
rare.
after it, because he watched the ending. He was like, we messed that movie up. I'm going to meet my demise in the worst way possible in every movie from here on out. I'm going to be a sketchy dude who gets his face chewed off or has to drink boob milk from an inbred monster underground. So he obviously is repenting for his sins that were Drag Me to Hell. But that's not for me. Even Seven, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. It's such a dark film. And then you still have the bad guy winning. Even though he dies, he wins. He got what he wanted, everything that he wanted in that movie. And so for me, I like to see good win. And I'll be damned if this movie didn't give me that in spades. This is one of the best final girls as far as being smart and realizing the situation she's in. Oftentimes they use the final girl as just a screaming, blubbering mess who manages to escape by luck and happenstance. Harper in this movie figures out what she needs to do to get out. When the car isn't working, she doesn't stick around trying to turn the key. That is such a horror trope, to try to start the key, try to figure out how to. She's like, nope, ditch the van, we're gone. So she gets out. She wakes up in the hospital and she gets clued in that they know where we live. So instead of thinking, I'm going to go home, or being out of it and not even realizing, she's like, okay, I got you. And I love the ending of this movie when the clown character walks in the house, and it's almost like a a quick 1 minute version of Home Alone. He walks in and he's stuck to the floor and he's like, "What the?" And then he falls over and he gets nails in the hand. And then when he looks up, she's standing there with the shotgun, uh, ready to just end him so that she can end the terror that was the haunt. I absolutely loved the ending of this movie. And I'll say something that I don't often say. I'm going to watch this again, and I'm going to watch it soon because I was so impressed with this. Again, and I'm taking it in the context of this wasn't a blockbuster film. This wasn't a Halloween release that was blasted on every form of social media that you can imagine. It wasn't put in your face like the Mission Impossible that's coming out, or Lilo and Stitch, or some of these other big blockbusters. This is a movie that was made and released and out into the wild for people to enjoy if they find it. And I'm so glad that, Justin, you suggested this movie, because otherwise I would have never heard of it, and I still would have gone about my merry way not knowing about this movie. But I was just very surprised. And the last thing I'll say before I give it over to Jay, this movie is so layered, and I don't know if it meant to be, but this isn't just about murder. They are toying with them. This is a psychological and emotional destruction of these people. They are reveling in torturing this group of friends, better than most of the Saw movies do. It's not about, oh, we're going to pick them off one by one. You're going to watch us kill your friend, but you're not going to know if we did or not. You're going to be under the assumption that it's Schrodinger's cat when they pull the blinds after she gets stabbed in the head, and then the ghost face killer is saying, "Oh no, she's outside, she's fine." Well, is she or isn't she? We don't know. I mean, we the viewer know, but as them, they don't, and they're getting separated and picked apart, and they're seeing things, but they can't really prove that any of it's happening other than they know it's happening, which is why they still, up until the point where they've gone too far and they know it's real, they're still trying to trust some of these people. Even at the end, when the one guy, they're looking at him, hesitantly, and he's looking for something in that box. I don't remember what he was looking for, but then he gets shot. Like, even to that moment, you still don't know to trust these people. You are still emotionally scarred from everything that's happened. Like, you don't even know where to look anymore. So I love this movie. I'll probably end up giving it a higher score than I've given in a while. So be prepared for that. I absolutely
take your heart
it.
medication.
I think that the character of Ghost is super fascinating. I'm glad you brought up Ghost, because that puts the killers with the kids. It puts the killer within that group, and the question of trust. You're never really sure if everyone that works at this haunt is in on it either.
Yeah, he gives them the key and actually helps them to get out of the room that they're in. So
exactly.
He builds that trust in a way where you think, oh, okay, maybe.
And he's the only one that talks seemingly normal. But then you see later on why he won't show them his face, because obviously he's one of the crazy face crew.
I think it's so interesting, though, to put him in with that group of people and have them trying to find escape when he's so aware the whole time of the futility in what they're doing. And he's not even needing to communicate the whole time with others. He just needs to be in that group and sort of act as a guide in a way. He's not pushing them anywhere either. He's allowing them to come upon, to discover a lot of the elements that they end up encountering, which I think is fascinating. And to the point about Harper, I think that applies to everyone in this film. Even if you look at the comic relief, which would be Andrew Caldwell as Evan, normally would be the goofy big guy or whatever. Everyone is smart in this movie. And Scott and Brian wanted that to be the case. They wanted it to be a horror film where you could trust the characters, because what is a faster way to dismantle trust in a character than to see them turn into some buffoon running up the stairs instead of out the door? That instantly disconnects the audience from what they're seeing, and you need to invest in the characters for it to matter. And in order to do that, you need thinking people there making decisions that you would make. And Scott and Brian give the audience the benefit of that doubt. by saying, we get that you want these people to survive and you don't want them to be fumbling around like idiots. And that's for the runtime of the film here. None of them are just making those cliche decisions that normally occur, especially in like a slasher film type format.
Well, yeah, and even to your point, the part when they're going over the fence, he throws his coat over the fence. Like they don't. He's thinking about how are they going to get over this razor wire, barbed wire, or whatever. He does that, and he realizes this guy's following him. He goes after him. He takes the fight to him because, again, like you said, that's where people get lost. Is they're trying to run. And he's like, no, I'm going to stop this guy right here. And to your point with Ghost, when he's in the room with them, he's not over talking. He's not doing anything to take their trust or to make them question, to get himself in a situation. He's almost, like you said, observing and letting them make decisions, knowing the futility and what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Very soft spoken. When you hear his voice, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
And the way he speaks, think about what Chaney did with that. He talks about it in the commentary. You guys got to listen to that commentary and hear how deep these guys got into thinking about these characters. But he didn't want him to be like, you guys shouldn't be in here or something. He wanted it to be like, hey, he wants it to be trustworthy. He wants it to be off-putting, even comforting in a way.
Like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
There you go.
Exactly. No one snuck off to have sex in the corner either, which was kind of refreshing because so many slashers now, it's just like a required element that they have to have. But everyone was smart. It's just a testament to the writers, right? To Scott and Brian. I think this is the third movie of theirs that we've done on this show, and I'm sure we'll do more because we're all fans of their work. So I had one big question. I was kind of on the fence between wanting more lore and having it as mysterious as it was, but you guys put me back to the mysterious side. There was a part of me like I kind of want to know a little bit more. Like, how do they buy groceries? Like, how do they do day-to-day thing, buy supplies for these haunts? Like, they obviously travel around, right? And they kill people, and then there's missing person in that town, but they're constantly traveling. But how
those are some
regular
Instacart
stuff
mofos there.
How did Saul do all the stuff that he did? Because he had cancer and he has the health care in the United States where it probably cost him $1 gajillion for that. How did he? We don't care. We just want to see the murder.
Yeah, that's true. I was very interested about the face. Obviously, they're sadists. I love this movie, and even though it was in passing, Kellen, this movie has been mentioned to you by me before. I've talked about the book on the show before, but no, I didn't nail it home, I guess. I watched this one from the jump. I was already familiar with Scott and Brian to a degree, so I'm like, oh, okay. When it released on Shudder, I loved it. But because of all the things we've already discussed getting to this point, it's so smart. It's so well written, acted, even with Ghost. Like, that was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is just the way he does talk to them, because he's like, you guys aren't supposed to be here. Like, it's just kind of like an oh shucks kind of voice that he gives. It's like, oh yeah, thank you. You know, like when we used to go to haunted houses and we get stuck in a maze and finally someone says this way and we're like, thank you. Like, we put that trust in them because we think they're helping us, even though clearly they weren't in this movie. One of my other favorite scenes is what's behind me is when they go into that one room with all the mannequins covered in sheets. Like, anytime you do something like that, I'm in. Like, I love that shot and the way it looks and how creepy it is, because if we were in that situation, we would shit our pants, right? Like, it's terrifying because you don't know. There were some cringy moments, like the guy who got his lip pulled up and off. That was rough. Anytime someone steps on a nail, that one's always going to hurt me a little bit.
They're always going to have something
that happen
like
to me
that.
3 times in my life. I've stepped on 3 separate nails, so
our buddy,
I can attest to the feeling.
I don't know if you knew the story about Rodney, but our buddy, he was a delivery driver for a little bit part-time, and he was running through someone's yard, and they had a pair of scissors, and it was up like this in the yard, and his foot came straight down on those scissors, and he had to go to the yard. Like, it went through his foot. Like, that stuff is just like awful. Love you, honey. So whenever there's I'm so desensitized. Like, we've said this before on the show, like, I'm so desensitized. It's really hard to make me say but it's little things like that. Circling back to the McCamey Manor. So there was a documentary. It was on Hulu. I don't know if you guys watched that or not, but it was insane. Like, you the waivers you sign, there was a question or two, like what's off limits? Like what's off limits to you? They would pull people's fingernails out. Like that one to me, that's worse than a nail in the foot.
I've
But you
also
can
ripped
wait.
off my own toenail with pliers. So
Oh
continue.
Christ Almighty, Kellen! They pulled your teeth. Like, would you guys go to an extreme haunted house?
I
No.
wouldn't sign a fucking
No.
waiver for anybody unless it's something I need medically. I'm never signing a fucking waiver. I don't care
It's
what
insane.
it is.
And there was another one here called Beast House. I don't know if it's still going or not. That was more towards the extreme side, not like the manor. I think that one's shut down now. Like that dude was 100% a sadist because if you watch that documentary, I think there's a part where he's holding the girl's head underwater, and you can see that twinkle in his fucking eyes, man.
Oh my
You can
God.
see it. He is enjoying the hell out of himself. But yeah, like I've seen this movie probably 5 or 6 times now. Like we mentioned earlier, I have the diaries they wrote while they were trying to get it made, while they were trying to get A Quiet Place made. I kind of wanted to rewatch it before we got here to this episode, but I just didn't have time. But if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend that as well to go along with this movie. Other than that, there's really not that much more to be said. So we can go around, give our rankings. Justin, last time you were here, we just interviewed you, which kind of what we kind of did here too. But so when we do a movie, we just go around and give a 5-star ranking. So whatever you would give this movie out of 5, and then we'll just tally our total at the end. So TJ, what'd you give this one?
Man, I think, I give so few 5s to anything like John Carpenter's Halloween, I think, because the main one I've given a 5 to, I've only given like 3 5s, but I feel like this is a solid 4.5, 100%. For what it does, and then the almost underexplored kind of subgenre that it is with haunted houses and stuff, it is the definitive one to watch. And I love, like Kellen said, it's one of the best final girls for that last half of that third act, man. She's getting after it and not making any stupid decisions, and that's somebody you want to root for. And totally rewatchable. It's just a little over an hour and a half, which is, I think, prime target timing for a great tight horror thriller. It's a 4.5 for me.
I had that in my notes too about the ending. Did anyone else see the Wrong Turn reimagining?
I did.
I
Yeah,
did.
the remake. Yeah,
Same
I don't
ending, right?
remember it that much.
yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. So it's not that great. Like I appreciate what they were trying to do, but you can't have that series and then completely turn
Do
it
a
the-
totally different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Justin.
Uh, I'm like you, TJ, where I reserve a 5. I'm so bad at ratings on things. Like if someone said make a list of 3 things that are on whatever the subject is, I'm going to come with like 8. That's always me. But so I'm going to say 4.5 as well. I think that it's really wonderful that in recent years, by my memory, we've had 2 Halloween classics enter the regular watch cycle for a lot of people. And they both had kind of similar stories in terms of their pathway into people's hands. And that's Mike Doherty's Trick or Treat
Mm-hmm.
and then Haunt. Because these are movies that I'm seeing every year, people posting when they're revisiting them. It's become a Halloween ritual. It's been rolled into the lineup with Halloween, with all these other films that people like to throw in that season of the year. And I think it just matches the season well. It's not like Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 or 3 that has no snow or
Right.
anything. You don't even feel like it's not a Christmas movie. This is Halloween, and it is the Halloween experience. And I think they made something really special with this film. And considering all the accolades and awards and nominations that they and the people they've put in their films and that have worked on their films already have garnered, you look at this thing, and this isn't from 30 years ago. This is just a few years ago. These guys are at like hitting that apex on their way up, and this lands. And I think that that's really exciting when people that are on the ascent create something so distinctive and special. So for me, not just because of the obvious things, I say 4.5.
John.
This genre, there's a lot of movies that have come out now that I think can kind of fit in this subgenre. I was thinking about it while we've been talking, and so far I've thought of Haunt, Hellfest, Bloodfest, the Funhouse, Haunted Ween,
Yeah.
Haunted Ween, The House is October Built, and the Funhouse Massacre, which I've been trying to get the guys from House is October Built forever. They've been playing this tag with me for like 4 years. One day, maybe we'll see. But I really love this movie. It is a solid 4 for me. I think the only thing in it that is a criticism, and it's very minor, is it's kind of a counter to what Kellen said earlier. When the guy is coming at them and they're leaving, and he turns around and leaves the fence to go fight him, I thought that was kind of dumb. I get why he did it, and the guy does have a gun. Once you watch, he does have a gun, so he hits him with the bat. But every time I watch that, I'm like, oh, just keep going, man. Like, don't just get out of there, But it's a solid 4. I mean, it's a great movie. So.
Fair, Kellen.
Before I give my rating, I just want to say, how dare you, Justin? How dare you? These are super affordable.
I told you.
I did not need
How
to
many
know that
purchases
going
will be
into
done
or out of this
during this
recording.
podcast?
And I'll tell you what, they are amazing. Like the quality on them is so great. They are like the old Ben Cooper masks, but they're heavier duty.
Shut your stupid face. I don't need to buy.
I'm going to keep talking. You can hang them on the wall. You look great, but you can wear them too. Like I see cosplay people at conventions all the time,
Trick or
especially as
Treat makes
ghosts.
so many great masks.
Yeah, well, those guys are brilliant. Yeah,
Oh,
you're welcome.
So much better than the old Don Post mask.
I guess I could always ask for them for my birthday. Let's
There
see.
you go.
One, two, there's a couple of I could get from. Anyway, so yeah, 4. I think that this is one of those movies that any gripes, complaints, or issues that you have with things that happen in the movie are minor. They don't take away from the enjoyment. I mean, oftentimes there's stuff in movies that just zap your energy for the whole rest of the film. Jay brings it up routinely. Abigail, the voice selection of some of the actors to do random accents that they had no business doing just took me out of the whole film, and I can't get past that. So to have some flaws like any movie does, but not flaws that take you away from the movie or take away your enjoyment, that's worth a 4 to me.
It's the accents that get you, governor.
It was that actor's so good, but that New Jersey accent was, hey, it's vampires. Oh no, there's a vampire in the house, and we're locked in the house with a vampire girl.
Did you see the Salem's Lot thing? I think it ended up on HBO or something. Did you guys watch that?
Yeah,
I was not a fan of that at all, really.
Such a classic to
How about the guy who played Harker in that? I could not believe that guy. I was like, he immediately ruined this for me. I mean, there was a lot of reasons I didn't love that, but
there were some choices made there.
There were some choices made. Yeah, my friend's Christine car is in it though. We got his Christine car in the movie.
Is that in the drive-in?
It's when they're driving. Strangely enough, it didn't make the drive-in, but at the beginning when what's his name, Ben or whatever, is driving into town, you see some shots that are exteriors of a garage with a bay, and there's a car in the bay. Christine's in there, and then there's a shot from inside the bay as his car drives by, right down her beautiful profile. And that's my friend Bill Gibson's Christine car.
That's cool.
Anyway, that's the best part of that movie for me.
Awesome. I only watched it once. It didn't blow me away, but I'm not as harsh as everyone else around here. So that puts us at a 4.3. We'll call it a 4.5. Because I gave it a 4.5 also. I guess you need my ranking too. I think the first time, I think it's progressed. I think I gave it a 3.5 when I first watched it. Then I think I went to a 4. I read the book and then watched it today. I'm like, this is so good on so many levels, and it's a movie you share like with other people who don't necessarily like horror. It's not that bad besides a scene or two, right? So you can introduce it to anyone. 4.5. That's it for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, join our Facebook group, and we have an Amazon Music playlist that is a banger after banger. So check that out as well. Justin, thank you again for hanging with us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm again really glad to be back with you guys. It's always a joy. Oh, look at this.
Oh, he's got to talk. You got to talk, Kellen.
My Christian mother would be so disappointed.
And Justin has a book. Don't you want to promote?
Yeah, well, I was just say we also stick around because we got a clip. Justin, you'll tell us about the clip. Tell us about your book and anything else you got going on.
Yeah, I reached out to Scott and Brian and Brian's overseas at a film festival right now, so he couldn't. But Scott kindly recorded. I said, "Hey, do you just want to talk about this release a little bit and how we put it together?" And he recorded some audio. It's about 9 minutes long or so that he sent in and talks about how this beast that we created came together. And I got to tell you, I thought he was just going to be like, so here's how we got the deal together. And it was cool to bring everyone together. But what he sent in had me in tears today when I heard it, because he delivered it to me just a few hours ago. And I was messaging TJ. I'm like, dude, I cannot believe this. And so everyone, please stay tuned for that. So you can hear from one of the creators, Scott Beck. He was very generous with his time in creating that little audio bit for you guys, and I hope
And
you
I'll
enjoy
throw
that.
his picture up so with tags for the video watchers.
And
Greatly
my
appreciate that.
yeah, because it is audio.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And thank you for asking about the book. The book is Roadside Memories, America's or beloved and bizarre attractions from North America's past. I have a monthly column in this magazine that TV Guide puts out called Remind. It's like an entertainment nostalgia magazine. And I pitched them. I did an all Halloween issue a couple years ago when they brought me in to be guest editor for their October issue. I mean, it was all Halloween series stuff. It's crazy. It's so good. And they usually have it for pretty cheap on the Remind page. It's got Michael Myers on the front, and it's 100% Halloween content inside there. And in fact, I even interviewed Mike Doherty, bringing him up because his office is in the Myers house in South Pasadena.
Oh, wow.
He's in what was Judith's room. That's where his office space is.
Where they relocated the house.
Yeah, where they relocated it. Yeah, now it's on their historic register, so it's protected. But anyway, he and I were working on Krampus at the time when I did this magazine thing, and I'm like, can you talk about your office space? He's like, yeah, okay. So we put it in there. I mean, there's so much great stuff. But anyway, I do a monthly column for Remind since that time, and it's on closed amusement parks, roadside attractions, like Route 66 type oddities. And this book collects the first 27 entries of the column. And each one of them is expanded from what you saw in the magazine, because I only get a page in the magazine. So I added a lot more detail, some new interviews, a bunch of other artifacts in it. But it's available everywhere books are sold, and on my site, which is justinbeam.com, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's out there and it's everywhere. And I plan to continue every couple of years, probably doing another volume of that. And it's part of a new publishing venture that I've launched this year that is going to be tremendously exciting when I really start talking about it. But there's a lot of cool stuff in queue on that front as well.
Yeah, mine's my book's on the way. Should be
Cool.
here just in time for me to go to the beach, so I'd probably knock it out down there. So
Oh, nice.
we appreciate you greatly. We could sit here and talk to you for hours. I was thinking while everybody was talking, I'm like, what actor or person, director do I have the most physical media from? It's probably Nicolas Cage, but no, it's Justin Beam.
Totally.
I'm pretty sure you're on 75% of what's on these shelves, which is nuts. So,
Oh my gosh.
go buy the book, go check them out. And thank you again. Of course, we'll have you back whenever.
Thank you,
and
guys.
if you tell Scott again, thank you for the clip. And we love everything that they're doing. All right, so signing off, I'm Jay with John, Justin Beam, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
Keep it spooky. And stay out of haunted houses with freaky clowns.
not possible.
Unless your name's Steve, and definitely go to that haunted house, you jerk son of a bitch.
The Haunt release that Justin Beam spearheaded was incredibly special to Brian and I. And it was coming on the heels of this bare bones release that was done literally with like nothing on the disc, which for Brian and I as cinephiles, like was sorely disappointing. Our entire film school is credited to supplemental features on DVDs and Blu-rays. Growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was the heyday to us. of, being able to consume a commentary and understanding every facet of production and artistic inspiration, or watching like a feature-length documentary about a movie like Magnolia, Paul Thomas Anderson's great making of on that disc, was instrumental in just understanding what it's like to truly be a fly on the wall behind the scenes and know like what is a director actually feeling. And so that's why Justin curating this Haunt special feature, this special edition, but also special features in general in his career. We've always really admired his tenacity to make things happen. And so with the Haunt release, it was very, very special. Justin approached us and had this vision of partnering with Ronin Flix and doing not just like a simple release, but we're going to pack it with special features. We're going to add pins of the masked villains. We're going to have a fold-out poster and map of the actual Haunt, which was taken directly from the archives from our production designer. Like, those are all going well above and beyond. It was something that we initially really, really loved about his vision. So when he started putting things together and pitching what the ideas could be, one of the things that he really wanted to do was like a commentary with the monsters, with Cheney Morrow and Damian Maffei and Justin Markson, who played the ghost and the devil and the clown. And we loved the idea of getting their perspective of that experience on the movie. One of the other things that absolutely adored was that Justin wanted to get Tom and Andy's score as like a secondary disc. That score was not available anywhere else, and some of the cues that they've created, they get lost in the mix when you're watching the movie. And so highlighting Tom and Andy's fantastic work was something that we really, really absolutely loved. And one of the longer features on the disc, which is half-hour like making of and interviews with the actors and the crew, we really admired how Justin brought that together, because to add some context to when we were doing this release, this was in the height of COVID. And so Justin was able to wrangle, so many people that worked on this film through Zoom interviews, and yet make it very personable and get, real stories from the set, from each of their perspectives. And one of the aspects that was icing on the cake, I think, for Brian and I, is Justin had booked a haunted house for a special shoot to kind of add to the background and the layers of inspiration that we had for the film. And the specific haunted house that he booked was one in our hometown in this area called the Quad Cities. And it was this haunted house that Brian and I went to as teenagers. And it was an abandoned warehouse that they transformed into this makeshift haunted house using these haunt actors that just did it for the love of it, not for a paycheck or anything during Halloween, but they just love it. And they actually kept this house running year round. And we felt so inspired to go back to that place that was like the original inspiration for creating the actual Haunt in the film. And I think, one of the final things that really sticks with us in terms of what Justin created for the Haunt special edition was something that actually didn't even make the disc, which was this mashup of interviews of all of our collaborators, and they spoke directly to the camera, to Brian and I, about their personal experience and what that experience really meant to them. Because certainly for Brian and I, it meant a lot, but on a film shoot, you don't usually get time to be nostalgic. Everybody, hits their rap day and then they disappear, and you sometimes stay in touch and other times you don't, but you don't really post-mortem of the crazy experience that you just went through. But Justin curated these interviews and made a special edit just for Brian and I that he sent to us one day. And it happened to hit on a day that we were going through production on another film, and it was like a very rough patch. We were feeling a little depressed. It was really, really difficult. And getting this video from Justin, this compilation that he sent, was incredibly beautiful. And I highlight this, not for what that experience gave Brian and I, but more so for the type of human being that Justin Beahm is. He gives everything to his collaborators, to his work, and that speaks to him not just as a producer and not as a filmmaker, but simply as a human being who truly respects everything that he adds to all around him.
Okay, I gotta ask before you leave, Justin. So I know you worked on the Demolition Man stuff.
Yeah.
Did you find out what the hell the damn seashells were?
No.
Did they tell you the secret to the three seashells?
I
I've always
never got the
wondered.
secret.
Okay.
No.
It's like the longest running gag.
I
since the
wonder if
90s.
Is that a
anybody
note
ever
with a
actually
wink?
developed it. I wonder if anybody ever actually developed what the three seashells would
Or if
actually
they just
do,
kept doing it over
and they just hit it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure there's some fan fiction out there.
yeah.
I'm sure one's for scraping, and that's probably more information than anybody needs to know.
Oh,
God.
gosh.
Nice.
Thanks,
Oh,
Colin.
man. Are you a
You're
big
welcome.
physical media guy? Like, do you collect a lot of like the formats and all? As
Me?
far as like, do you buy a lot of the disc and releases, or I know
Yeah.
like Michael Felcher, I watch his live streams a lot. He talks about how he's kind of condensed his down. He doesn't buy as much as he used to, but I wondered how that was for you.
Yeah, I still definitely do. I get really excited. And when there's sales, especially, I get super pumped. Like I'll go through the Vinegar Syndrome sale religiously whenever one of those happens.
Just happened.
Yeah,
I
it
know
just
that. I know that
happened.
game.
Yep. And there's some stuff that I just want to have on day one. So yeah, I'm on involved with all these companies, and so I see everything when it's announced, and I get super pumped up and do the pre-releases. Some of them will send me comps of some things, which is very kind of them.
It's awesome.
It's really nice, but yeah, my shelves are packed.
Were
and I
you
have
ever into Twilight Time?
I resented Twilight Time, and I'll tell you why. Because they would get on a license and they would release it once and they would do a quantity of 2,500
Yeah.
and then they sat on the license, which happened with
Oh.
Christine. Because
Well, that's
I was,
why Fright Night, they did that Fright Night and Body Double.
yeah, and they held some Elvis movies hostage too. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way. It's a proper license. They can do what they want with it. I get it.
Mhm.
But it did suck with Christine, especially because a lot of people wanted that.
That's right. I had that,
And-
Christine.
And when it sold out, everyone's just like, okay, you just got to wait 4 more years. And then
Or
maybe
buy it for
Sony-
$200 on eBay.
And then Sony finally got the rights back and they put it out. This happened even with the best intentions, like with Paramount as part of their Paramount Presents line. Those were always limited in quantity to like, I think 2,500 or 5,000. And one of the biggest titles I've ever been a part of that I'm so proud of was Bringing Out the Dead last year, Martin Scorsese. And I shot Scorsese. I went to Nicolas Cage's house in Las Vegas and had the most amazing day with him there.
Awesome.
I shot Paul Schrader. I mean, I got all these people on this thing. It sold out immediately. It got nominated for a bunch of awards, but it didn't win any because nobody got to get it. It's sold out, and it's heartbreaking that it's not out there in people's hands. And on eBay, like you were to your point, people are scalping it now. They're like charging hundreds of dollars for this thing. And I keep asking the Paramount team when it's going to hit general catalog, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know." I'm like, "How
Damn.
much more convincing do you need?" It's sold out within like a month of coming out,
Right.
and everyone's been knocking my door down for it since. So
Did you know that the Christine car, and I didn't know this until the other day, that's a real thing? The Golden Eagle, that's a real car that has a haunted history.
the
I
Golden
hadn't-
Eagle.
Yeah, so if you look up real Christine car, I read this, I got down the rabbit hole one night, I was like up late,
Yeah.
and apparently there is a car that existed that has like a death curse tied to it. It is real. I swear to God, it's the weirdest thing. And I think it's called the Golden Eagle, and it kind of freaked me out because Carpenter, if you read the articles on it, I don't know if like Carpenter ever acknowledged it. I'm sure King knew about it, but yeah, it's very scary. It's kind of like the Annabelle doll thing. Like
It wasn't
there's
exactly
part of
the
that-
model of Christine, though, was
Was
it?
part of that kind
No.
of tied into the idea behind the James Dean car?
Spider. Yeah, the spider. Yeah, that was the lore behind
Yeah.
that too.
Mhm.
Because it had killed its owners previously. I think after too. So
It's a 1964 Dodge 330. That's the real car. So I don't know.
I'll have to look that up. No, I've written tons on Christine. In fact, when the 58 Plymouth Fury was inducted into the Chrysler Hall of Fame, they brought me in to speak on behalf of Christine. So I went out to Pennsylvania to this big car event. It was the most intimidating night of my life because the whole night was like these guys who were legendary drivers, the Blue Angels team. The guy who invented the Hemi engine got this big award. And then I get up there and I talk about this romanticized relationship between like parents and children and how the car can form a bond and facilitate activities and communication between them and how that transitioned to this evil in this book and on screen. And I just felt completely out of place. But I've done so much stuff with Christine and I've helped Bill at different convention appearances with that car too. And the way people react to it, getting a chance to be close to it. And he has all this memorabilia and every version of the book from every country. And people are definitely passionate about it. But in all my coverage of it, I've never heard that story brought up. I've never heard about any other cars being a direct reference. I wrote about it in Fangoria early on, and that article was focused on the cars. I wanted to tell the story of Christine from the sort of viewpoint in a way, like through the lifeline of these cars that were completely neglected because they were famously rust-laden kind of junkers, and hardly any of them lasted. So I wanted to tell the story of the cars. I've been to the junkyard where they dumped them all after the production, and I've gone to great lengths in research for articles in Fango and Horror Hound and a few others. So I've really exhausted the minds on Christine, and it's strange. I've never heard that brought up before.
I thought it was fake, and I kept reading about it. And then there was this thing where they talked about people committed suicide. A cop had it. Someone at a church had it. It's really odd.
Wow.
I'm superstitious in a way. So, like, if I was near the Christine car, I would not get in that damn thing. I'm not touching it. Like,
Even from the movie?
No, I just don't. It just scares something
Don't,
about it. It's
don't
just
they
very
do photo ops
scary.
with it at cons now?
Yeah,
I call shotgun.
I think he's taken it to Scarefest before.
Hey, Justin,
Yeah, he
thanks for
has.
coming on.
Yeah.
I got to jump off. It was a pleasure. I hate I missed the first time, but thank you for coming on again, and please come on anytime.
You're an
likewise.
honorary
Nice to
member of
meet
the
you.
Sanctum now, Justin.
Oh, thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Cullen.
Yeah, he does do appearances, and there's guys out there with tribute cars too that do conventions all the time. But Bill has his rigged up to do stuff from the movie. So if you sit in it, we have it on remote control. In fact, do you guys watch Svengoolie?
Oh yeah,
I dressed up as him for Halloween last
he
year.
did.
Oh my God.
And I ended up on the site.
He
when
did.
we were in Chicago maybe 2 years ago for a convention. Sven was there, of course. He's always there at this one. And I got him to come over and see the car. So I talked to Sven about it, and he and his crew came over and they filmed a little interview with Bill. And I was running the remote during the interview, making Christine in the background do stuff. And it's been on the air. It's been on Svengoolie, you know, when he does On the Road with Sven or whatever. And so anyway, if someone sits in the car, we can have it do so many things. We can have the windows go up, the locks go down, the radio turn on, playing You're Mine and We Belong Together, and it glows green. And then the cabin these are all different steps in the process. We can have the cabin start filling with smoke, and then the seat starts moving forward like it's going to crush you, like Darnell
John's like,
in
nuh-uh.
the movie. It is so crazy. And even just for photo ops, if people are standing next to it, he has it rigged so he can hit a button and the windshield sprayer thing sprays water at the person standing next to the car. It's all crazy, man. He's done so much work on that thing, and it's photo perfect to the film. The engine, every aspect of it. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you. Read the book,
I'm all ready.
the diary. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, man. I'm out too. Thank you
All right,
again.
guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Y'all have
You
a good
too,
one.
man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Come back anytime.